Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to diagnose your character for any deficits both offensively and defensively. We first will need to figure out how to use Path of Building. In particular, how to load our character into Path of Building so that we may check all aspects of it. On screen, you will see that you can import your character by pressing the Import tab on the top left, writing your character name, pressing Start, and showing your character is pulled from Necropolis League. Here it says Affliction, but it will say Necropolis. And make sure that we import every aspect of our character onto a brand new POB. This will be particularly useful as we'll be able to configure the settings and play around to see what we need to improve on both offensively and defensively. Now that we've imported our character into POB, let's take a look at what we can improve on in terms of damage and offense. First of all, make sure that all your gems are linked properly and that the correct gem links are linked together, as well as enabled in the POB, and the count is set to 9. Check if all your gems are quality 20, and if they're not, this is another point in which you should consider when looking for ways to increase your damage. Make sure Frenzy Charges are ticked or untick them if you're bossing and can't sustain them, and set Gale Force to 10, as you'll be whirling blading over the boss over and over, which will generate stacks of Gale Force. Do not touch the effect of Elusive, as this is set to average in POB, and set your resonance counts to 50 to assume Trinity, and set your shock to 15. Or you could change this number should you so wish, and change your projectile travel distance to 1, as I'm assuming if you're having damage issues, it's most likely on a boss, so you will be right on top of the boss. I want you to take a look at your crit chance here and your crit multiplier. Are they high enough? What are you lacking in? If you swap to crit, is it reasonably high, like around 50 to 60%? And if not, why? It could be because your claw doesn't have a crit chance suffix, or that you're lacking a diamond flask with one of the flask suffixes of increases to critical strike chance. We gain a lot of critical multiplier on the tree, so I won't be surprised if this is relatively high. If you're not on crit yet and you're on precise technique, make sure your main hand accuracy is above your life. On screen here, I will just artificially inflate my life, and as you can see, we will lose a significant amount of damage. I am now going to go over the offensive checklist that you should go through while diagnosing why your build is lacking in offense. Primarily, this is an attack build, so your claw will be the singular most important thing. Let's check, is the EDPS of your claw sufficient compared to the build guides? To do this, you can press Ctrl D using the extension Awaken PoE Trade and taking a look at this number. This is a useful way to identify claws off the ground as you're progressing through the Atlas and the campaign. Normally, I like to just ID all rare claws and press Ctrl D just to check if I should swap my claw with this claw that I found on the ground. You could also press Ctrl C on the claw, hop over to POB, paste it as a custom item, and check the elemental DPS there. Or the same can be done when you pull your build into POB and just hover over your claw. Now let's take a look at the claw. If you're crit, is there crit chance as a suffix on your claw? And if you're non-crit or still crit in general, is the attack speed on your claw sufficient? If any of these are lacking, you can always just craft a suffix or buy another claw off trade and improve your elemental DPS that way. I would also want you to take a look at the tree. The tree is carefully crafted for progression. Have you ticked all the relevant masteries on the tree? Such as the blind mastery, which is often overlooked, as it gives a large amount of crit chance when we hit blinded enemies, which we always will, as we are always blinding enemies with support on the tree. I also want you to check if Trinity is proccing. You can check this on the top left, and if not, find out the reason why. Are you doing too much of one damage type? Is there not enough overlap? Remember, you only need 2 elements to proc Trinity and not 3. I also want you to take a look at the hit chance in the POB. This usually means that you're lacking accuracy. Therefore, try to level up your precision gem, or if you can't do so, you can always take accuracy masteries or craft accuracy on your gear. Finally, I just want you to check if your flasks match the guide's flask. In particular, do you have a diamond flask? And does any one of your flasks have the crit chance suffix? The diamond flask itself doesn't require the suffix. Your jade flask could hold this, but just make sure that one of your flasks do, as this also provides a large amount of crit chance. Alright, we are now going to diagnose our character defensively. First, we're going to head over to our skills and untick any guard skills, as this will artificially inflate our EHP. And then we're going to head over to the configuration settings and make sure the enemies are blinded, and we're going to make sure that we're elusive. We gain elusive from Nightblade, and the enemies are blinded from support on the tree. Then we're going to head over and make sure that this setting is ticked to Guardian Pinnacle to accurately reflect the difficulty of red maps. And now we can see what our EHP is. Of course, this value will be different depending on whatever your character is, and each max hit is going to vary depending on your stats. Scrolling down, we're going to head over to the resistance section, and we're going to make sure all three resistances are capped. Chaos res may be uncapped early on, as it's hard to get, but understand that it is a very important layer. I am now just going to artificially cap our chaos res, and we can see the large change in EHP, almost 4,000. Understandably, chaos res is hard to get early on, but even a little bit goes a long way. Of course, make sure to equip the amethyst flask in the item section. Evasion rating is our main primary defense, as stated in my build guide, so make sure we get this as high as possible through the Jade Flask and armor bases. Most importantly, our armor bases should be strength and dex or just purely dex. Now that the POB section is done, let's go through the defensive checklist that you should go through while diagnosing your build. In particular, you should take a look if your resistances are capped. This includes chaos resistance. As I demonstrated earlier, even a little bit goes a long way. You should also make sure to check your evasion and evade chance. Remember that our primary defensive layer is evasion, so the higher this is, the better your evade chance will be and the better you will survive. You primarily get this from having strength or dex-based gear, strength and dex-based gear in combination, or just purely dex-based gear. We also obtain it from Grace and Dread Banner. I also want you to take a look at each affixes of your gear. Is that mana roll very useful? How does that energy shield contribute to our build? It is often the case that many players have often useless or unuseful affixes on their gear, lowering the quality of gear. Therefore, in judging each piece of gear, the better the affixes, the better the gear, and the least useful affixes for the build, the worse the gear. Therefore, you should take a look at which pieces of gear that you need to upgrade right away, either through trade or through crafting. I also want you to take a look at the spell suppression. Is your spell suppression chance capped, or is it just pseudo-capped? Remember, even that last 5% will go a long way in increasing your EHP, as eventually, even with 95% spell suppress chance, you will take the odd spell hit and unfortunately will die from it due to our low health pool that is very common among rangers. I also want you to take a look at your flasks, not just the type of flask, but also the suffixes on them. On my build guide, I included the related suffixes that you should get. They don't have to exactly match the flask, but you should have at least one of these suffixes on your flask. I also want you to consider if you're rolling your maps too hard. Remember, this is a league starter, and you are league starting using basically gear off the floor. So we shouldn't expect to be playing or running very, very difficult maps. On screen are some of the map mods to avoid. In red, these are the map mods the build simply just cannot run. And in yellow are some of the map mods the build would not like, so try to avoid them if possible. In general, reduced aura effect and reduced maximum resistances, although the build can run them, it's going to feel almost unplayable. if you scale map modifier effects. And in Necropolis League, there is quite a bit of that on the Atlas tree. So I just want you to check, are you rolling your maps too hard?